This is a Viva PR podcast.
I started back in an era when media monitoring was really scissors and a Pritt stick. We process millions of pieces of media coverage in an hour. At no point has technology replaced human insight. Brand narratives are being shaped by conversations that are happening outside of traditional media channels. Focus on AI supporting your expertise rather than replacing your strategic value.
Welcome to PR in the Real World. I'm your host, Tony Garner, and today we're talking about all things media intelligence and AI with Liam Kelly. Now, Liam's the Vice President Product Marketing at Onclusive, the global media intelligence platform. So, of course, we're going to be talking about AI and media monitoring, but we're also going to be talking about GEO and what it really means for communicators like you and me, plus the skills that PR teams are going to need in the future to stay in front. Let's get on with it.
So, Liam, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's great to be here.
So you've spent 25 years plus in media intelligence, going from paper clippings to AI-powered tools. But can we start from what drew you into that space in the first place, and then maybe kind of what keeps you there?
I mean, I feel really old. For start. I think I only know a handful of people that set out for a career in media intelligence. Most of us fell into it, and I'm no different. I had no idea what it was all about until I actually started doing it. And in truth, I'm Australian. I moved to London, and I met someone at a party who was recruiting for a media intelligence business, and I said, yeah, I need a job. So I that's how I started. And I started back in an era when media monitoring was really scissors and a Pritt stick and cutting out articles and pasting them onto a bit of paper. And I think what's been really fascinating to watch is how that the whole market has changed. You've seen a real transformation in the media landscape, and the way that's impacted how brands engage and communicate has been really fascinating to sort of look on from the sidelines a little bit. And alongside that, within the industry, the media intelligence industry itself, we've seen a sort of really client-demanded transformation as we've gone from sort of manual processes like me with my lighter and a ruler, to more sort of AI-powered insights via things like NLP, 15 odd years ago, machine learning more recently, and now sort of generative AI. And so, I think that part has been really interesting as well. It certainly kept me involved. I mean, certainly when I started out sort of processing 10 articles an hour was thought to be really fast. For me, that was a highlight. And now at Onclusive, we process millions of pieces of media coverage in an hour. And it's incredible the way that technology works. And it reflects the media landscape that we are part of, and the needs of our clients, which is pretty exciting.
That's a really interesting and honest answer about how you got into the industry. How quickly was it when you got in there and realized what you were doing that you thought, well, this is quite interesting?
It was pretty instant, to be honest. I studied history, so I'm kind of interested in the way things work and how culture works, really. And I think sort of PR is fascinating to look at. The way that brands intersect with media, the way that brands engage with their audience, I think is particularly fascinating to see. And the nice thing about media intelligence and media measurement, media monitoring, is that you take a bit of a back seat to the stars, which are the communicators and the journalists, and you just get to see the interplay and how it all works, which is great. It's really interesting to do.
That's cool. I mean, for listeners who, there might be one or two out there who do not know much about Onclusive. So can you give us a quick overview about what the company does and kind of where it fits into the kind of landscape?
So Onclusive was formed about 3 years ago. So we're an amalgamation of a few different companies, including Kantar's reputation business, or Precise here in the UK, PR Manager, Digimind, a social listening provider, Critical Mention, which is one of the world's best broadcasting monitoring businesses. And so we're sort of all of these organizations that have come together, and we provide a unified media intelligence solution that supports thousands of PR, comms, and marketing professionals across the UK and globally. We're headquartered here in London. And as I say, I mean, we process millions of pieces of content every day, and through a platform that we have called the Global Content Hub, which we've just built using sort of modern AI technology. We have a lot of investment on innovation. And our sort of suite supports the complete PR workday. So we do everything from media monitoring to media contact database, press release distribution, social media intelligence and analytics, as well as insights and editorial to support all of our customers.
You've worked at different partners in the industry over your career. What's been the kind of biggest change that you've seen, both in how PR teams work, but also within that kind of industry?
I think, I think the industry itself has seen a real technology change. I think that's really what's driven the industry. I mean, I find it so interesting that this is how much of a geek I am, Tony. I write a newsletter every month called PR Measured, and I've done that for the last 10 years. And it's really just looking at the industry and looking at what's changing, because there is a lot of change. It's continually evolving. But I think from a PR perspective, thinking about it really with measurement in mind, there has been a shift from AVEs, or advertising value equivalents, to meaningful sort of business impact metrics over the last 25 odd years. I mean, PR teams still use AVEs. I really wish they wouldn't. But there has been a shift in perception. I think actually everyone understands why they shouldn't use them, at least, which is a positive. And I think as well, there's been a shift or change in terms of, asking the question of like, how many clips did we get? It used to be, we used to joke about the thud factor of a clippings book. And it's, how many inches is it? And now it's more a question of, how did we sort of influence business outcomes? What did we do? And what was the impact? And it's much more data driven rather than, like a physical clippings book. And I think that's been really, really interesting to see. And that's thanks not only to providers, but also to AMEC, which is a trade body for media intelligence, which has provided a lot of guidance around things like the Barcelona principles and the integrated measurement framework. And it's an open sort of source for information around measurement, certainly, that anyone can access and engage with. You don't necessarily need to be buying products from a supplier to do it.
Yeah, I think the conversation over that couple of decades has fundamentally changed, hasn't it? Like you said, people understood that AVEs is probably not a good measure, but how do you kind of prove your worth if you're not going to use that, and how can we drill into the businesses better and get sharper impact measures? How do your teams help that with that solution then?
So for us, it's a good question. I think for us, it's really around understanding what it is that a customer is trying to do. So we give clients access to a very broad set of content. And it's not just media content anymore. It's not earned media content anymore. We look at social and owned. It's really about giving customers access to as much content as possible, and then shaping that into metrics that are going to help sort of measure what it is you're trying to achieve. So, are you reaching the right audience? So you use the data that's going to be relevant for your audience. audience? Are you, are you trying to, what is it you really want to do? And then finding the right data to do that. I think that's really where we come in, is offering as much as possible so that you can really willow it down to what you need.
Now, can we talk about AI now? Because it was in a conversation with one of our previous guests, Daryl from Hard Numbers, that he said you've got to speak to Liam because, and it was in a conversation around how AI can, will shape our industry going forward. But it's interesting to kind of understand how AI is shaping the measurement industry. As well. So when we spoke ahead of this recording, you talked about it in terms of evolution rather than revolution. So I'm curious to kind of understand what you mean by that, and how does AI show up in your day to day, and how do you think it will affect things going forward? I know there's a lot there, but if we can,
I think so. The way that we're applying AI, and generative AI is really what we're talking about here, currently builds on things that have already been there. So there has been a sort of an industry push, like a client push from a media intelligence perspective, a client push to process content faster, to get data faster, and to be able to do it in as close to real time as possible. And to do that, you have to remove some manual processes and replace it with technology. And as the amount of content and data out there has grown, and it's grown exponentially with social, and the need for technology has increased to process it, to deliver it out to a PR or comms person as quickly as possible, so you can identify trends, understand if there might be an emerging issue, etc. So that has been a technology-led evolution anyway. And really what we're doing with generative AI is an additional piece of technology that comes along and supports that process, really, and supports that data collection. So it's not a huge revolution. It really is just the next iteration, the next step. And I would say that at no point has technology replaced human insight or strategic thinking or critical thinking in any way. It's always about how do we get the information that you need faster, more effectively, so that you can make smarter decisions that are data focused and data driven.
So clearly it's going to have some kind of impact for the PR teams who are doing the work as well. Is it changing the way that the PR teams that you engage with measure success and kind of report back, you think?
I don't think it changes the way that people are measuring success, because it's always really, success metrics are really around what did you set out to achieve and did you achieve it? Uh-huh. But I think it does help to understand information or understand content faster. So you can get to, you can sort of understand the impact a little more quickly. I think that's really where AI helps and supports the process.
And I guess if you can understand that quickly, you can pivot if you need to, or do more of what you're doing to kind of build on what good looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. The other sort of use case for it is around things like crisis detection. So we use predictive metrics within our social listening tool to understand how, if a story is breaking within, say, Reddit or Twitter or X, I should say, if a story is breaking that seems to be negative around a brand, and flagging that to a client so they can say, oh, do I need to take action? Is this something where I need to avert a potential crisis, or just be aware of it? Do I just need to track it? So it's those sorts of things where we sort of look at velocity of content, and that's really where AI can support as well. So it's in multiple different sort of places, but it's all there to support decision making.
That's really fascinating. So that idea of being able to flag something up very quickly, especially in those kind of crisis situations where you need to know things very, very quickly.
Yeah.
that I can see that being a really useful tool. How often does that click in? I get, you guys, is it a day-to-day occurrence that you're doing these flags for people?
Yeah, so they are automated for us. So and they will simply flag things through to a customer. Now, in truth, they may not always be a crisis for a customer. It might just be a peak in content.
Yeah.
And they're aware of it, and that's a good thing. So it's really about making sure that a customer knows what's going on and is engaged.
Yeah, I mean, that's really useful. A good contact of mine once said, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know that little bit more than your clients. And that arms you with that little bit of knowledge, doesn't it? That, you want to be the ones making that call, not having the client calling you, going, have you seen this? And you're being completely unaware. Interesting. So, what are some of the kind of most common and effective ways PR teams do you think can take advantage of it? You've talked about that one, but AI-enabled PR measurement. That what can we be doing as an agency to really kind of get the best out of places like Onclusive?
It's when I think of like measurement. I think about interpretation, right? So how are you going to understand what's going on? So generative AI is very, very good at summarization. And what you can do is, rather than reading every single piece of content that's being generated for a client or for a campaign, you can take that media coverage or the social content and create quick summaries in your own language that sort of explain the key drivers of coverage, the likely impact it might have on a brand, and the individual stories or social posts that are sort of shaping the narrative. And you can do that. We have a tool at Onclusive that does that. It's part of all of our monitoring services as well as social listening, and other sort of tools do. But you can also use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or some similar LLM to do the same sort of thing based on the content that you have. And I think it gives PR teams the basis for the interpretation, right?
Yeah.
And it'll do it in moments. So you don't have to spend a day reading through everything and tagging it and making sure that you've got a sense for what's going on. You can instead just focus on the strategic response, the taking action, and sort of reaching out to journalists and actually, trying to shape or reshape a narrative if that's what you need to do.
Is there a danger here that the kind of models will get it wrong, though, if you lean too heavily into the kind of AI response? How accurate are they?
Yeah, it's a really valid question. So at Onclusive, we have a team of AI and machine learning engineers, and we build tools that are very tailored to a PR, corporate comms, and marketing sort of use case. So what we're developing is really around, is this going to be relevant for our audience and for our users? And that's our focus. But if you're using ChatGPT yourself, you do need to pay attention to what the results might be. And you may also need to look at the prompt that you're using and how you're shaping the response that you get. It does take a bit of learning to do, but it's worth doing. Because you are right. An over-reliance on ChatGPT or a similar LLM is not helpful for you. You may miss something that is important.
Yeah, I mean, we hear about and we know about biases and hallucinations within those tools, but they're getting very good and very sophisticated, and those things are much harder to spot these days. But that's not to say they're not around, I guess.
No, it's true. And I think it's one of those things where you need to be very mindful of it. I think as well that the responses that you sometimes get from a generative AI tool sounds very convincing. And they're designed to be
Yeah.
to be trusted. So you do need to pay attention to that as well. But look, I'd say make sure you put in place some guardrails of your own.
Yeah.
Validate what you're seeing. Check some of if you're going to use it for summarization, check some of the content. Just make sure that it makes sense before you use it. And then also, I mean, I'd always say don't ever just copy and paste what you see and assume that it's going to be right. You always validate it for your own sense. And it's our interpretation of what we see is the most important thing. And I think that's the value that PR and comms people bring to it. So always make sure that you know what it means while using the tools.
I wonder if there are any other kind of pitfalls that people should be aware of that you could point out, or are those the kind of major two?
I think that the biases are certainly inherent within all of the tools. It's important to remember that that LLMs are trained on, largely English language, primarily US content, and so they are biased to a certain viewpoint, and they're also biased in terms of their representation of gender, of race, and all of those elements are certainly there. So it is something to be mindful of when you're using them, and also you can. If you have time and you're interested, you can actually engage with LLMs and ask them about the biases that they have and how do they counter them? What are they actually doing? You can ask the question, you will get a response, and it will explain to you exactly what the biases might be.
That's really useful advice. You mentioned earlier in one of your answers around Reddit, platforms like that and major news outlets influencing AI search results. How is this occurring in the data that you're seeing? And, from our perspective with my kind of agency hat on, why should we care about it and what can we do about it?
Well, you should care because what we're starting to see is, and we've seen it quite rapidly, is consumers shifting to AI search as AI search first, if you like. Rather than standard search, like using Google. We've also seen things like Google and Chrome. If you run a search, you'll get an AI summarization of the response. And what we're tending to see is that consumers are engaging less in content. So they're not necessarily clicking through to a website. They're simply relying on that summarization or on the response they're getting from an LLM.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why you should definitely care about it, because that is a consumer behavior that's shifting. And what it means, though, is that those responses are shaping reputation and they're shaping how consumers might perceive a brand, those little summarizations that you see. And that's really where I think PR teams can influence what's there and what's being said. LLMs, so large language models, are trained on diverse content sources, including Reddit, as well as forums. YouTube seems to be very prevalent as well, in addition to sort of niche publications and online media. And that means that the brand narratives are being shaped by conversations that are happening outside of traditional media channels. And they may be happening outside of where a brand's target audience usually is. So the sorts of things you might be typically engaging with, it may not necessarily be having much of an impact when it comes to AI search results. And I think PR teams now need to sort of move beyond traditional SEO to what's being called GEO, that generative engine optimization. It has various different names at the moment. And I think it really just means trying to monitor and engage with conversations that are happening on platforms where your audience and AI systems intersect. And that includes things like Reddit and YouTube, to be fair, even Wikipedia. And you just need to make sure that the brand's voice is authentic, information is accurate when it's there. And also when you're creating content, try to optimize it for AI consumption. So just make it very clear, make it factual, make sure it's well structured, and include things like FAQs and sort of shorter summaries. and then put them into, when you publish them into newsrooms that are discoverable by AI tools and that are being sort of indexed. I mean, Onclusive provides those sorts of newsrooms for our customers. And I think as well, just be aware that AI tools and those AI search results are going to come up with, are going to treat sort of content that comes from, say, Reddit and Reuters in exactly the same way, and they'll view them equally. So there's no different weighting that might be happening on those tools. So I think just be really mindful as what the outputs might look like, and that those tools are actually just going to come up with the responses that they need based on whatever content they can see.
Is it true though that various kind of AI tool providers are doing deals with some of the traditional media outlets, and I think Daryl, one of our previous guests, was highlighting the fact that the Financial Times shows up in a lot of citations, far more, in maybe 3% of citations, when it's got a very small kind of circulation, and obviously kind of well read from a niche publication perspective, but certainly not like a mass media publication, and not at that kind of 3% level that you would expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it really does vary depending on the brand and what it is you're doing. So OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, has done a number of media deals with publishers so that they can ingest the content and train their models using that content, and also flag it as a source for the responses that they're providing. But I mean, there are multiple publishers that are doing similar sorts of deals with LLMs. Dow Jones is also doing them. So like it is happening everywhere. But by the same token, I mean, the content changes quite quickly. The search results will change quickly as well. And the way that a brand is being perceived or talked about will also change, depending on the element.
What does this mean then for your industry and how things are changing? I mean, and this change has happened very rapidly, hasn't it, over the last 2 years, 18 months? What does it mean for people who are within your world, and for people who engage with people like yourselves?
For us, I mean, we provide access to all of the data and content that a PR person might need to understand how they're being perceived out in the broader world. And that includes by LLMs, right? So we view it as being for us, it's really another way of supporting a PR and comms person to understand their media landscape in a different way. This is really simply a different application for media content. But still, the needs are the same. You still need to understand, what's the brand reputation look like? I mean, how is the brand being perceived across different channels? And what impact is it actually going to have on my target audience? Those sorts of things are still the same, but it doesn't really matter where it's ending up.
Right. And I guess if the large language models are still are crawling traditional media titles, it kind of underlines the value of our industry for our clients, and the work that we do, getting clients placed in these titles is going to have that kind of effect in positive effect in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also that the core, one of the core roles of PR is to shape that narrative and to ensure that it is aligned with what the brand is trying to achieve. And you do that via media, which is then being used in these, as you say, in large language models. I think the role of PR is not necessarily changing. I think how audiences engage with the content is certainly changing.
And I guess then what I don't know what your take on this is, but we might be able to see a new discipline emerging around generative engine optimization for the PR world. Because I think, again, going back to Daryl, he's talking about that we should claim this space before the digital agencies come along and with their love of data.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. I think Daryl's right. I think that there is. I mean, some would argue that the new discipline is already here. I'd say they're probably stretching things a bit, but absolutely, there is a big role for PR to play with generative engine optimization and really helping to shape how LLMs are going to talk about a brand. And I think, I think PR professionals just need to understand how those AI systems consume content, how they process it, how they present it back out to their audiences. And that's not easy. I mean, no one makes it easy for people to actually understand how they work.
No.
Let's be honest. But there's a lot that a PR person can do to really take ownership. At the end of the day, I mean, bear in mind, you are taking ownership of a brand's reputation, and that is a pretty standard PR job.
You mentioned earlier one of the ways that you can do this is by creating shorter summaries, and another was FAQs. Now I've seen this FAQs line a few times now. Where'd you get that information, and what do you mean? Like, why is an FAQ going to be helpful?
Because it answers a question using in a relatively short order, typically. So if you're looking for a question, you're asking a question around something, and it's been indexed, then it knows that whatever follows that question is the answer. And that's the reason why. It just makes it a bit easier for the content to be consumed.
And nice little hack there. Thank you for that. For a kind of smaller agencies and regional PR teams, I could look in the mirror for this one, I guess. And sometimes you can feel a little bit kind of overwhelmed of all this stuff coming along, and everything that you've mentioned that Onclusive does is great, but we don't necessarily always have the budgets to kind of go to you guys all the time. What's the kind of one AI-driven workflow that we should probably look at adopting tomorrow that would make our lives easier?
It's a really good question, and there are a lot, Tony. So, but you're asking for one. So, well, let's start with sort of one AI-powered tool that most people probably already have. And coming from the industry, it's media monitoring is what I'm thinking about. It's already full of AI, and most PR teams do use media monitoring in some way. So you're already using AI in your workflow to deliver you the content that you need when you need it. So it's already a part. So don't be scared about embracing it or taking a big step forward. You're already doing it. And I think the place to start, so the next step would be to look at summarization and using AI. So many media monitoring tools include the ability to summarize content within the tool. So so it's really to help you understand how content is likely to impact on your brand or the audience, and just provide sort of quick summaries as to what's going on. And they'll be using AI to do that, and of course they're built with PR teams in mind. So it's really that's to help save you time, so you can focus on the relationship building that you need to do, or message creation, whatever it is you're trying to do for your clients. I'd say that's a small step that you can take with tools that you probably already have, and will just help you understand it a little bit more.
No, that's a really good. Have you got any others up your sleeve, or would we be here all day?
Well, I mean, please. I think for me, just get involved. It's I would say use things like AI-powered sentiment analysis is another one that is quite useful to do if you've got a lot of content. start using it for competitor tracking. If you're looking at multiple brands, trying to understand what different brands might be doing, you can use large language models to do that with competitors. And you can also do it for message creation and for not necessarily create messages, but for a part of a creative workflow to say, I want to do this. I want to engage this. Give me some ideas. LLMs are really helpful for that. And you can engage in that way. And do a bit of back and forth. You can have a conversation. It's just really a way of using them as part of your own creative process. So these are all small things that you can do, and they're all helpful, really. And they also help to shorten the amount of time you might be spending doing a certain task, which we all need some extra time in our day.
We absolutely do. So in terms of whether you see that this is AI fundamentally changing things, we talked about evolution, not revolution earlier. Well, what kind of skill sets do you think might be required in the future? We've got producer Meg in the room, who's relatively new in her career. So what would be your message to like, what will the skills of the PR practitioner of the future need?
Well, I think that the core PR skills remain essential. So like relationship building, strategic thinking, that storytelling, crisis management, those sorts of skills are still needed. And there are the newer competencies, things like data literacy. So really understanding what data means and how you can interpret data results and data visualization. And that's not necessarily a new skill that's being brought about by AI, but it's certainly something to be aware of. I think alongside that, there is sort of prompt engineering. So really knowing how to create a prompt that will give you the results that you actually need that are going to be useful for you. And that just takes a bit of patience and back and forth and learning.
Yeah.
And as well, I think just understanding cross-platform content optimization. So when you're producing content, think about where is it going to sit? Like, where is it going to end up? It's not just where you might be sending it. So think about, should you be putting this onto Reddit? Could you be creating a video and putting it onto YouTube as well? Should you be, engaging with media in different ways? Just be really mindful of where it's all going to end up and how it might actually help brand perceptions on an LLM or wherever it's going to be.
Excellent. Thank you for that. She's nodding away and taking lots of notes. So that's really good. Thank you for that. And for PR leaders who still feeling a little bit uncertain about where to go with AI, what's the kind of one piece of advice to help them kind of stay future ready?
I mean, I'd question why you'd be unsure, but I do But I do generally understand it, because there is a lot out there. I mean, as we've already talked about this, there are hallucinations, there are biases, there are some issues with AI, and it doesn't always get it right. And it does take time, and you do need to be patient. And that's the reason why you should come and talk to like a media intelligence business that does produce AI tools, because we produce them for you. So you don't have to go through that learning curve yourself. But I'd just say, start experimenting with AI tools in really low risk situations, and just be aware you may not get the perfect result first time. It does take some time. And I think as well, just focus on AI as being supporting your sort of existing expertise rather than replacing your strategic value, because actually the value that you bring is not something that AI can replace, if you like, Tony. So I think that's really the way I would approach is think about how is it going to help me do my job a bit better today.
Perfect. But before, I'm conscious of time, but before I let you go, you mentioned earlier about the newsletter that you've been doing for 10 years. I take my hat off for anybody who's plugged away for that long. Tell us a little bit more about it, and for anybody listening who might be interested, how they can get on your mailing list, and what kinds of things do you cover? And
it's called PR Measured, and you can take a look at LinkedIn or prmeasured.com. And what I do is every month I look at the media intelligence industry and I look at actually how it's changing. So what new products have come on, what new product features are available across different tools, but also mergers and acquisitions and partnerships, and looking at actually the trends that are coming through. So recently, for example, we've seen a real shift in focus towards AI search analytics across media intelligence businesses. So, and that really reflects that changing need from our PR audience. And so, I think that's really what I cover on PR Measured, and it's been fascinating to see how the industry has changed over a decade.
What was the trigger that got you to kind of get involved and do that?
I started a consultancy for media intelligence businesses, and it was really a way for me to understand what was going on, and to engage with the audience. And I really enjoy doing it. So I have kept going, Tony. I've kept going.
Fair play to you. I mean, it's a long way these days. I mean, we've talked a lot, but we've not mentioned Pritt sticks much at all, have we? And highlighter pen. it's a world away. But thank you so much for that, Liam. It's been a really fascinating journey, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot of people out there really intrigued and learn something from that. So thanks again for your time, mate.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real world stories from the PR frontlines.